The ruins were silent, broken walls standing like bones of a dead city. Dust floated in the air, and the wind carried only whispers of the past. The human walked carefully, his boots crunching on scattered stones. He had come here to find shelter for the night, nothing more. But then he heard it, a faint sound, soft and weak, like a cry lost in the wind. He stopped, listening. At first, he thought it was only the ruins echoing, but then the sound came again, a voice trembling and low. It was not a man's voice, not the voice of any soldier or raider. It was a woman's voice, filled with pain, filled with fear. The human followed the sound, through a broken arch, down a dark corridor. There, in the shadow of a fallen pillar, he saw her, an alien woman kneeling on the cold ground, her skin pale, her eyes sunken, her arms shaking, and in her arms, a small infant wrapped in torn cloth, too weak to move. She lifted her face when she saw him, her lips cracked, her breath shallow, her voice broke as she whispered, "My milk, it has dried up. Human, please, my baby has not eaten for days." The human froze. He had faced many things in this world, hunters, raiders, even wild beasts. But nothing struck his heart like this. The sight of a mother begging not for herself but for the tiny life in her arms. The baby let out a weak cry, more of a whimper than a voice. It was the sound of hunger, the sound of fading life. The mother rocked the child, tears rolling down her face. "I tried," she whispered, her hands trembling. "I begged my people, but they cast me out. They said I was useless, cursed. They left me here to die, with my child in my arms." The human felt his chest tighten. He stepped closer, but she flinched. Her eyes filled with both fear and hope. She did not know if he would help, or if he would finish what her people had already started. "I have nothing," she whispered again, her voice breaking like glass. "I cannot feed him. He will die before the next sun. Please, human, you are my last hope." The human looked at her, at the thin, fragile mother who still held her baby close, at the infant whose tiny chest rose and fell like a dying flame. He felt a storm rise inside him. He had no reason to help her, no promise, no bond, yet something inside refused to walk away. He slowly crouched down, his shadow falling over them both. The baby's eyes opened for a moment, two dim lights, searching, begging. The human reached into his pack. He had only a little food, a little water. But perhaps something could be done. The mother's lips trembled as she saw his hands move. For the first time, a spark of hope lit her broken eyes. Still, fear lingered. Would he truly help, or would this be another cruelty? The ruins were silent again. The wind stopped, as if the whole world held its breath, waiting for his answer. And in that silence, the human knew this was no ordinary night. This was the moment where life and death hung by a single choice, his choice. The human's heart pounded as he looked at the alien mother. Her arms clutched the child tighter, as if afraid someone would snatch him away. Her eyes were wide, shining with tears, her voice still shaking. She had begged, and now she waited, breathless. Would this strange human leave her or save her? The human stared at the infant. The child's tiny lips moved weakly, searching for food that was not there. His skin looked pale, his breath faint. The sound of his whimper filled the broken ruins, and each sound struck the human like a blade. He had seen hunger before, but never this close, never this helpless. He opened his pack slowly. Inside were pieces of dried bread, some herbs, and a little flask of water. Hardly enough for him to survive the next few days. If he shared, he would grow weaker. If he refused, the baby might not live until the next morning. The human closed his eyes for a moment. In his mind, he saw battles, wars, and endless suffering. He remembered comrades who had starved, children he could not save, and now here was another child, small, fragile, and clinging to life by a thread. The mother's voice broke the silence. "Please, I will give anything. Take my life, take my body, but not my child. Only save him." The human's chest grew heavy. He saw how her hands trembled as she held the baby closer. She was ready to sacrifice herself if it meant her child lived. Something deep inside him stirred. Not duty, not command, but something far more human. He opened his eyes and whispered, I will not take your life. I will give life instead. The mother gasped, her lips parted, hope flickered in her eyes, but still she hesitated, as if she could not trust what she heard. Humans were known for strength, for war, for survival, but kindness, that was rare. Her body trembled as she whispered, You would help me? Help us? The human nodded slowly. He pulled out his flask of water. Gently, he poured a few drops onto a cloth and touched it to the baby's lips. The child's mouth moved, desperate and weak. He drank, and though it was not milk, it was something. It was life. The mother sobbed softly. Tears ran down her face as she watched her baby respond. It was the smallest sign, yet it was enough. For the first time in days, she felt a spark of hope. But the human knew water alone would not be enough. The baby needed food, nourishment, more than he had. He looked at the mother and said, This is only a beginning. If the child is to live, I must find more, food, something he can take safely. The mother's eyes widened with fear. Outside? The beasts, the hunters, they will kill you. Her voice trembled. She did not want to lose the one person who had shown mercy. The human tightened his pack and stood tall. His eyes were firm, his voice steady. I have faced worse. If I walk away now, the child dies. If I fight, maybe we live. That is my choice. The ruins grew silent again. The baby whimpered. The mother's sobs echoed softly. The human turned toward the broken archway. The night outside was dark, filled with dangers unseen, but he walked forward without fear, for in his heart, he carried a new purpose. Not survival for himself, but survival for a mother and her starving child. And in the shadows, unseen eyes watched him leave. Predators, enemies, something else. The danger was already closer than he thought. The ruins were cold that night, shadows stretched long, and the silence was broken only by a weak cry. The alien mother sat against the broken wall, her arms wrapped tightly around her baby. The child whimpered softly, each sound so faint it barely touched the air. She rocked him back and forth, her lips pressed to his forehead, whispering words he was too weak to hear. Stay with me, little one. Do not leave me yet. Her tears fell on his tiny face, but the child no longer had the strength to move. The human knelt close. He watched the infant's chest rise and fall like a dying flame. Every breath seemed to take all the child's strength. The human's fists clenched. He had seen soldiers bleed out on battlefields. But this quiet suffering was far worse. The mother lifted her eyes to him, her face pale, her lips trembling. He cries, but there is nothing for him. He is hungry, human, so hungry. Her voice cracked. It was not the cry of a woman for herself. It was the cry of a mother who could not give life to her child. Her hands shook as she pulled the cloth tighter around the baby, as if warmth could replace food, but it could not. The human searched his pack again. There was almost nothing left. Hard bread, dried herbs, a little water. Nothing that could save a starving infant. He cursed under his breath. For the first time in years, he felt powerless. The baby's tiny mouth opened and closed, searching, begging, but finding nothing. A sound escaped. A small cry, broken, then silence, the kind of silence that chills the soul. The mother gasped and shook him gently. No, breathe, my child, breathe. Her sobs filled the air, her voice rising higher with panic. The human placed his hand over the infant's chest. The heart still beat, but weak. So weak, he pulled the flask again. Let a drop of water touch the baby's lips. For a moment, the child moved. A soft swallow, a faint sound. It was enough to keep him alive, but not for long. The mother collapsed against the wall, her shoulders shaking. I failed him. I failed as a mother. Her voice was bitter, filled with shame. They called me cursed, said my body was broken, and maybe they were right. My child is paying the price for my weakness. The human stared at her. He saw not weakness, but strength. She had carried her baby through exile, through hunger, still fighting, still begging strangers for help. That was not weakness. It was love. But her words cut deep, because he knew she would not forgive herself if the baby died. He crouched closer, his voice steady. You have not failed. You are here. You are still fighting. That is more than many could do. her eyes filled with fresh tears. But what is love, if love cannot feed him? The human fell silent. He could not answer, because she was right. Love alone could not save the child. Food was needed, something more, and he had none. The infant stirred again, a small sound, a whimper. It was as if even in weakness, the child refused to give up. That sound pierced the night. It was a call, not only from the child but from fate itself. The human stood suddenly, his jaw set, his eyes burning with fire. He turned to the mother. "I cannot watch him die. I will find something, anything, I swear it." The mother's voice trembled. "But you will be killed out there." He shook his head. "If I do nothing, he dies anyway. I will not let that happen." The ruins fell silent again. The mother clutched her baby, her heart torn between hope and fear. The human walked toward the dark archway. The night outside waited, dangerous and full of eyes, but he carried with him the sound of the baby's hunger, a sound that would not leave his soul until he brought life back. The human returned to the shadows of the ruins, his steps slow, his face pale. He had searched the nearby ground for signs of food, but the night was dangerous, and he had to return before the beasts smelled his trail. When he entered, he saw the mother still sitting against the wall, her baby weak in her arms. She rocked him gently, as if motion alone could keep him alive. Her eyes lifted toward him, tired, red from crying, but still holding a faint spark of hope. "You came back," she whispered, her voice trembling as though she feared he would never return. The human placed his pack down and sat close, his face hard with thought. "There is little out there tonight," he said, "but I will try again at dawn. For now we must keep him alive until then." The mother nodded slowly, her hands tightened around her baby. Her lips parted as if she wanted to say something, but for a long time, she stayed silent. The only sound was the baby's shallow breaths. Then her voice broke through, soft and heavy with sorrow. "Human, there is something you must know, something about me, about why we are here." The human turned to her, his eyes steady. She looked away, ashamed, her voice trembled. "My people cast me out, not only because my milk dried, but because I was born different." She lifted the cloth from her baby's face, revealing faint markings on his skin, strange, glowing symbols that shimmered faintly in the dark. "They say my child carries a curse," she whispered. "They believe his birth brought shame upon the clan, that he is not a blessing, but a sign of weakness." The human frowned. He studied the markings. They were not curses, not to his eyes, just patterns of nature, beautiful and strange. Yet he could see the fear in her eyes as she continued. "When I could not feed him, they said it was proof that the child should not live. They gave me a choice: leave him behind and return, or take him and be exiled forever. I chose my child." Her voice cracked as she spoke the last words. Tears fell onto the baby's skin. "I chose him, even if it meant death, even if it meant wandering the cold nights with no food. I could not abandon him. He is all I have." The human's chest tightened. He saw her pain, her shame, her fierce love. She had carried this secret alone, bearing not only hunger, but the weight of her clan's hatred. He spoke firmly. "They were wrong. This is no curse. A mother who chooses her child, even against her people, is stronger than any of them." Her lips trembled. Her eyes widened at his words. For years, she had heard only whispers of weakness, only words of blame. But now, this stranger, this human, called her strong. Her voice broke into sobs. "You do not understand. If others see him, they will kill him. They will not rest until both of us are gone. Even now they may be searching." The human's jaw tightened. He looked toward the broken walls of the ruins. He could almost feel the eyes of hunters in the dark, watching, waiting. The mother's secret was not just a story, it was a warning. He turned back to her and said, "Then they will have to go through me first. I will not let them touch him or you." Her breath caught. She stared at him, stunned. No one, not her people, not even her family, had ever spoken such words for her and her child. Her heart trembled. For the first time since her exile, she felt she was not alone. The ruins grew cold as the night deepened. The baby whimpered again. The mother rocked him closer, her voice low and broken. "You should not stay near me. You will only share my curse." But the human only leaned closer, his eyes sharp, his voice unshaken. "Not a curse, a promise, and I keep my promises." The silence that followed was heavy, the kind that comes before danger strikes, and in that silence the human understood the real fight was not only against hunger, but against those who wanted the child gone. The first light of dawn touched the ruins. Shadows stretched long across the broken stones. The human rose from his place beside the mother and her child. His face was hard, his eyes set with quiet fire. The night had been restless, filled with the sound of the baby's weak cries. Now the sun rose, and with it, his decision. He would find food, no matter the cost. The mother looked at him, fear clear in her eyes. "You should not go alone," she whispered. "Out there, beasts roam and hunters patrol. They smell weakness. They will smell us too." Her arms tightened around her baby as if to protect him from dangers she could not see. The human placed a hand on her shoulder, his voice steady. "If I stay, he dies of hunger. If I go, there is a chance. I cannot sit and watch him fade." She lowered her head, her tears fell silently onto her baby's face, but she did not stop him, because deep in her heart, she knew he was right. The human stepped out into the pale morning light, his boots crunching against dirt and broken glass. The ruins gave way to dry land, where twisted trees grew and strange plants crawled across the rocks. He kept his senses sharp. Every sound, every movement in the distance could mean danger. Hours passed. He searched the ground for roots, pulled at plants. Most were bitter, some were poisonous. He knew enough to test, but his supplies were thin, and the clock of the child's hunger ticked louder in his mind with every wasted minute. Suddenly, a sound cut through the silence. A low growl, deep and guttural. The human froze. From the shadows of broken stone, a creature emerged. Tall, its back arched, its claws sharp as blades, its eyes locked onto him. It was hungry too. The human gripped his knife, his heart pounded. This was no ordinary beast. It was a stalker, one that hunted anything weak enough to fall. And right now, it saw him as prey, the crow. Each lunged, claws tearing the ground. The human dodged, rolling aside. Dust filled the air as his blade slashed across its leg. The beast howled, its roar echoing across the wasteland. He knew the sound would carry. Other hunters might hear, but there was no choice now. He had to survive this. The fight was brutal. Claws ripped his sleeve, drawing blood from his arm, but the human fought with a fury the beast could not match. With one final strike, he drove his knife deep into its throat. The creature collapsed, twitching, then lay still, its blood dark on the ground. Breathing hard, the human wiped his blade. Pain throbbed in his arm, but he did not stop. He looked at the carcass. Meat. It was dangerous, alien flesh, but with fire, maybe it could be made safe. Maybe it could keep the child alive. He cut what he could carry, wrapped it in cloth, then gathered roots and herbs nearby. His hands worked quickly, his ears sharp for more sounds, because where one beast was, more could follow. As he turned back toward the ruins, he felt something, a presence, heavy and cold. He stopped, his eyes scanning the horizon, and there, far off, he saw them. Figures moving in the distance, tall, armed, not beasts this time, but hunters, aliens of her clan, tracking the one they had cast out. The human's jaw clenched. He tightened his grip on the pack. There was no time to waste. The child needed this food, and the mother needed his strength. He began to run back toward the ruins, every step faster, his blood hot with purpose. Behind him, the hunters drew closer. The game was no longer just survival. It was a race against death itself. The ruins were silent when the human returned. His arm bled from the beast's claw, but in his pack he carried hope. The mother's eyes widened when she saw him. Her lips trembled and tears filled her eyes. "You came back. You truly came back." Her voice cracked as she reached for the bundle in his hands. The smell of meat and roots filled the cold air. For the first time, her child might taste life again. But before relief could settle, a sharp sound echoed in the ruins. Not the cry of the baby, not the howl of a beast. It was the sound of boots, heavy and cruel. The human froze. The mother's face turned pale. She clutched her baby closer to her chest, whispering in fear. They found us. From the broken archway, a figure stepped into the dim light. Tall, armored, his eyes cold as stone. He carried a spear glowing faintly with energy, his gaze locked onto the mother and child, then shifted to the human. A sneer twisted across his face. So, the hunter's voice rumbled. The cursed one still lives, and she hides behind a human. How fitting, a weakling guarded by a fool. The mother shook her head, her voice trembling. Please, leave us, we are no threat to you. But the hunter laughed. No threat? Your very existence is a stain. Your child was meant to be gone long ago, and now you dare cling to him? The baby whimpered. The sound only made the hunter's smile crueler. He lifted his spear, pointing it toward the child. One strike, and the shame ends forever. The human stepped forward, his voice low but sharp. You'll touch neither of them. The hunter's laugh echoed through the ruins. You, a human? You think you can stop me? His eyes narrowed. You fight beasts, maybe, but I am no beast. I am the hand of her clan. I bring the judgment she escaped. The mother's tears fell fast. She whispered, No, please, do not do this. He is all I have. Her voice cracked. But the hunter's steps only grew heavier as he approached. The human's grip tightened on his blade. He moved between the mother and the spear. His chest rose and fell with steady breath. Inside, fire burned, not for himself, but for the fragile life behind him. The hunter tilted his head. I will give you a chance, human. Step aside, and I will spare your life. You cannot protect what is already doomed. The human's answer was calm, his eyes steady. If doom is coming, then it will meet me first. The hunter's sneer vanished, replaced with cold fury. Without another word, he lunged forward, spear slicing the air with deadly speed. The human dodged, the weapon striking stone, sparks flying. The clash rang through the ruins like thunder. The baby cried louder now. The mother's sobs filled the air. The fight had begun, a fight not just for survival, but for the right of a mother to hold her child alive. The hunter's movements were sharp, trained, merciless. Each strike aimed to kill, but the human fought with something stronger than skill. A purpose. Every block, every swing of his blade came with one vow. They will not die while I stand. The ruins shook with the clash of man and hunter, and in that moment, the choice the human had made burned brighter than fear. He was no longer a wanderer, no longer alone. He was a shield, a wall, and the hunter would have to break that wall or fall against it. The ruins echoed with the clash of metal and stone. The hunter's spear cut through the air with deadly force. The human's knife flashed, blocking, striking, dodging. Dust rose with every impact. The mother pressed herself against the wall, clutching her baby, her heart racing as she watched the two fight for her child's fate. The hunter's voice was cold and sharp. You cannot win, human. You are bleeding already. Every strike weakens you. Soon you will fall, and the child will follow. Blood dripped from the human's arm where the beast had clawed him earlier. Now the hunter's spear had added fresh wounds. Pain burned through his body, but his eyes never wavered. He fought not for himself, but for the small life crying behind him, and for the mother who had begged in despair. The hunter lunged. The spear tip grazed the human's side. A sharp pain burst through him, but with a growl, he stepped in close. His blade slashed across the hunter's chest, a deep wound that made the alien stagger back. The hunter roared, his eyes blazing with fury. You dare wound me, you worthless creature! He swung the spear again with deadly speed. The human ducked low, rolling across the ground. His knife found the hunter's leg, cutting deep. The alien stumbled, his movement slower now, but his rage only grew stronger. The baby wailed. The sound filled the ruins like a desperate drum. Every cry struck the human's heart like fire. He could not, he would not, let that cry end in silence. The hunter charged, but this time the human was ready. He waited until the last moment, then stepped aside, grabbing the spear shaft. With a twist and a roar, he wrenched it free. The hunter's eyes widened in shock, and in that instant, the human drove his blade into the alien's throat. Silence followed. The hunter fell to his knees, his eyes wide with disbelief. Blood poured down his chest. As he collapsed onto the stone floor, his spear clattered beside him, glowing faintly until it dimmed. The ruins were still again, except for the baby's cries and the human's heavy breaths. The mother gasped, her eyes wide as she looked at the human, his arm bleeding, his side torn, yet he stood tall, knife dripping, the man who had faced death itself for her child. She fell to her knees, sobbing. You bled. You suffered. For us. Why? You had no reason, no bond, no duty. Why? The human wiped blood from his face. His voice was rough but steady. Because no child should starve, no mother should beg, and no clan has the right to decide who lives and who dies. He dropped to his knees beside her. From his pack he pulled the meat and roots he had risked everything to find. His hands shook from blood loss, but he built a small fire in the ruins. Smoke curled upward as he prepared the food carefully. The smell of roasted flesh filled the air. It was risky, but it was life. When the food was ready, he tore it into tiny pieces, softened with water, and touched it to the baby's lips. The child stirred weakly, his mouth opened, and he swallowed. One piece, then another. A faint sound escaped. Not a cry of pain, but a sound of relief. The mother's tears fell freely. She covered her mouth as her baby drank. For the first time in days, her child was eating. Life returned in small sparks to his fragile body. She whispered through sobs, You gave blood, and now you gave milk to my child. You are more than human. You are salvation. The human leaned back, exhausted, blood soaking his clothes, but a faint smile on his lips. The baby's cries had changed, no longer a cry of hunger, but a sound of survival. Yet even as relief filled the ruins, the human knew this was not the end, because where one hunter came, more would follow. The ruins smelled of smoke and cooked meat. The fire crackled softly, its glow warming the cold stone walls. The human sat weakly beside it, blood still soaking through his torn clothes, yet his hands were steady as he broke the food into smaller pieces. He dipped them into water to soften them, each piece prepared with more care than a king's meal. The mother leaned forward, her heart racing. Her arms trembled as she held her baby close. The child's lips quivered, his tiny chest rising and falling like a dying ember. Her voice cracked as she whispered, Please, please take it, little one. Please live. The human held out the softened piece, touched it gently to the baby's lips. For a moment, nothing happened. The baby's mouth remained still. The mother's eyes widened with terror. What if it was too late? What if even now her child had no strength left to eat? Then a small sound came, a faint swallow. The baby's lips moved, weak but desperate, and he took in the food. A second later, he swallowed again. The mother gasped, her tears falling freely. He eats. By the stars, he eats. The human gave another small piece, and another. Slowly, the baby's body stirred with life. The weak cries grew louder, stronger, each sound echoing through the ruins, not as sorrow, but as hope. The mother pressed her lips to her child's forehead, her sobs shaking her body. I thought I lost you. I thought I failed you. But you're here. You're alive. Her voice cracked, breaking into joy and sorrow together. The human leaned back, exhaustion heavy on his shoulders. Every wound burned, every breath hurt, but the sound of the baby feeding filled him with strength. It was a victory far greater than any battle he had fought before. For hours, the child took tiny sips. Bit by bit, his strength returned. Color touched his cheeks. His eyes fluttered open for longer, and when he cried an ow, it was not the cry of a fading soul. It was the cry of life demanding more. The mother looked at the human, her face glowing with gratitude. You gave him life, she whispered. You gave me hope when even my people gave me none. Why would you do this? For us. The human's gaze was steady, his voice calm, though his body trembled. Because no child deserves to starve, and no mother should beg for mercy while others turn away. If I had walked past you that night, I would have carried the weight of it forever. I chose not to. Her lips trembled, her heart ached with the weight of his words. In that moment, she saw not just a human, but something far greater, a protector, a savior, someone who stood against death itself for a life that was not his own. The fire burned low. The baby fell asleep at last, peaceful for the first time in days. The mother brushed her hand across his tiny face, then looked at the human, her voice soft but filled with certainty. You are his guardian now. Whether you wish it or not, you belong to us. The human said nothing, but deep inside, he felt the truth of her words. He had crossed a line. He was no longer just a wanderer surviving for himself. He was bound now to a starving child and the mother who had chosen exile for love. Yet even in the quiet, danger pressed at the edges of the ruins. The hunter's blood was still fresh on the ground, and far away, more footsteps would soon follow. Enemies who would not forgive what he had done. The first feeding had saved the child's life, but it had also lit a fire, one that would draw others straight to them. The ruins were quiet in the morning light. Smoke from the fire rose in thin lines. The baby slept soundly against his mother's chest, his tiny breath soft, steady, a sound that gave her more peace than she had known in many nights. The human sat nearby, his body weak, his wounds burning, but his eyes remained sharp, watching the horizon. Every muscle in him refused to rest, because he knew the fight was not finished. One hunter had fallen, but hunters never came alone. The mother stroked her baby's hair, her voice trembling in a whisper. He lives. Because of you. I will never forget this. Tears welled in her eyes, but for once they were not tears of despair. They were tears of hope. Then a sound cut through the calm, a distant rhythm. Boots, many boots, marching across stone and dirt. The human's jaw tightened. The mother froze, her face turning pale. She clutched her child tighter, as if her heartbeat alone could hide him. From the broken archway, shadows grew larger. Figures emerged. Tall, armored aliens, spears and blades in hand. At least 6 of them, their eyes sharp, their movements firm, and at their front stood a leader. His armor marked with symbols of authority, his gaze filled with cold hatred. The mother gasped. Her lips trembled as she whispered, "My clan. They have come." The leader's voice cut through the ruins like a blade. So the cursed one still breathes, and she dares hide with an outsider. Shame upon you, exile, you were warned. Leave the child, or be hunted until you fall. The mother shook her head, tears streaming down her face, her arms wrapped around her baby as if the world itself tried to tear him away. No, no, you will not touch him. I will never give him to you. The leader sneered. You already chose weakness. Now you hide behind a bleeding human? Pathetic. Step aside, outsider. This is not your fight. The human rose slowly, blood still dripping from his arm, but his voice was steady. This is my fight now. As long as I stand, you will not touch them. The warriors behind the leader laughed, their voices echoing cruelly. A human dares to challenge us? He bleeds already. He is half dead. One strike will finish him. But the leader's smile was not amusement. It was fury, sharp and merciless. Then let him die with her, he spat. Kill the human and bring me the child. The mother cried out, No, please, he saved us. He saved my baby when you all abandoned me. You call him weak, but he is stronger than all of you. Her words only deepened their anger, their weapons raised, their steps closing in. The baby stirred, letting out a soft cry. The mother's tears fell on his face as she whispered, Stay quiet, my love. Do not fear. Your guardian stands before you. The human tightened his grip on the fallen hunter's spear. The weapon still hummed faintly with energy. He raised it, his voice sharp. You call me weak, but weakness is leaving a child to starve. Strength is fighting for one who cannot fight for themselves. For a moment, silence filled the ruins. Even the clan paused, their eyes fixed on him. His words echoed off the broken walls. And for some, doubt flickered in their hearts. The leader snarled, breaking the silence. You speak like a fool, but words will not save you. He lifted his blade high, and with a command, the warriors surged forward. The ruins shook with the sound of their approach. The human planted his feet firmly. Every muscle in his body screamed with pain, but he did not move back, not one step. He would face them all if he had to. Behind him, the mother held her child, her tears falling like rain. Her heart cried out in silence. Do not leave us. You are all we have. The moment stretched thin like glass, ready to shatter in blood and fire, and as the Arriers charged. The fate of mother, child, and human hung on the edge of a single breath. The ruins trembled as the warriors charged. Their weapons gleamed in the dim light. Their steps shook the ground. The air was heavy with the promise of blood. The human stood tall, his body broken but unbending. One hand clutched the fallen hunter's spear, the other held his knife. His breath came heavy, but his eyes burned with fire. Behind him, the mother clutched her child, her heart beating so fast she thought it might break. Her tears streamed down her cheeks as she whispered, "Please, please live. Please do not leave us." The warrior's roars filled the air. The human gritted his teeth and stepped forward. He met the first strike with the spear. The clash rang loud like thunder. He twisted, slashed, and drove the blade into the warrior's chest. The alien fell with a cry, blood staining the stone. Another came from his left. The human spun, his knife cutting across the alien's arm. Pain flashed in his wound. His vision blurred, but he pressed on. Every swing of his blade was not for himself. It was for the child's weak breath, for the mother's desperate tears, for the promise he had made. The leader snarled from behind his warriors, "Kill him! End this farce!" Two more rushed him. The human spear spun, blocking one. The knife slashed the other, but claws raked his back. He stumbled, blood dripping. Still, he would not fall. He forced himself upright, his voice breaking out in a roar that shook the ruins. "You will not take them." The warriors faltered for a moment, for in his voice was not fear, but something greater, a will stronger than their weapons. The mother cried out, her voice sharp, "Look at him. He bleeds for us. He fights when all of you turned away. You call him weak, but he is the strongest of all." Some of the clan hesitated, her words cutting into their hearts. They remembered the law of their people. Strength protects, weakness abandons. And here before them, a wounded human stood stronger than their entire clan. The leader's fury exploded. "Silence! He is nothing!" He charged forward himself, his blade aimed straight for the human's chest. The human's body screamed in pain, but his heart did not waver. He met the charge head-on. The spear clashed with the leader's blade. Sparks burst in the air. The sound echoed like a storm. The leader pressed forward, stronger, faster. The human's arms trembled. But then he remembered the baby's soft cry, the mother's desperate plea, and the fire inside him grew. With one final push, he twisted the spear. The blade slid past the leader's guard, straight into his chest. The leader gasped, his eyes wide with disbelief. He staggered back, the blade still inside him. Then he fell to the ground, lifeless. Silence fell. The other warriors froze, their weapons lowered. They looked at the human, bloodied, broken, but still standing, and they felt shame burn in their hearts. One by one, they stepped back, their eyes lowered. Some dropped their weapons entirely. None dared to move against him again. The human pulled the spear free and dropped it. His body swayed, his knees almost gave, but the mother rushed forward, her baby still in her arms. She caught him before he could fall. Her tears fell onto his blood-stained face. "You stood for us. You gave everything. You are not only our protector, you are our family." The baby stirred in her arms, a tiny sound escaping. Not hunger, not weakness, but life. The human closed his eyes, a faint smile on his lips, exhausted but at peace, for he had kept his promise. The ruins lay silent again, but this time, it was not silence of despair. It was silence after victory, silence where a new bond was born. The exile was no longer alone. Her child was no longer cursed, because a human had stood when no one else would. And from that day on, their story was no longer one of sorrow, but of hope.